I was the 5th woman in Victoria to be diagnosed. I was the 12th in Australia.
Kaposi sarcoma. It was a visual.
That's stupid to have contracted
In
HIV.
1987, 200 men were tested over a couple of workshops, and 90% of those young men tested for a thing called GRID.
Gang-related infectious disease. GRID.
Screaming in my head at God or whoever is up there. How can you bring me someone that makes me feel like this? That
I
something that makes me
always
feel so
preferred bareback sex, and I felt guilty every time I had it because I knew the risks associated.
I ended up taking up lots of loads from lots of guys who I didn't
on the
know.
basis of their HIV status.
Really? How do you feel about that?
Some people can be really harsh, saying, I don't know how you can date, live with and sleep with a positive man. How can you do that to yourself?
I would not sleep with someone if they told me they were
Well,
HIV.
it was when the Grim Reaper ads were right.
Stigma.
It's really useful for a lot of people to try and
I hate
control
myself
other
for that reaction because I reacted the same way to people in my hometown.
Oh, well, you're very promiscuous, so therefore you must have HIV. Otherwise, if I told them that I do have HIV...
She was my best friend.
I took my pill.
When people were first diagnosed going back into the early 80s, they were immediately put on a disabled pension immediately without question because they were going to die. Yeah, things had to change. Oh, it affected people so differently. Now look, I don't mean to be rude, but you know, there were a lot of party drugs back then and people were abusing their bodies. Yeah. Look, if you led a healthy lifestyle, your immune system was far higher than those that had been partying, and I can tell you, it was those that were living longer, not the party boys. It was true in those days. Now the advertising seems to have stopped. I'm not saying push it in people's faces, but it's the heterosexual community, not just our gay community. I'm talking heterosexual, bisexual and others. Look, it was a gay man's disease at one point, but now it is more people being infected with positive women and bisexual activities. Yeah. We've got to get to our youth. It still amazes me the age group of people being affected. It's the 18 to 25-year-old men. Oh, and when I think about it, HIV's been around for 30 years. And these kids, they were just babies when we were rallying on the streets with candlelight vigils. They were just being born. Some of them weren't born.
I went through a process, quite rationally, of not feeling guilty about having bareback sex and just rather accept that there were risks associated and, I don't know, deal with the consequences of those risks when they arrive. I self-sorted into communities, where it was accepted that people had bareback sex. One of those steps was discovering BB, an online hookup site for people who wanted to have bareback sex. The people that I was associating with was somebody that happened to be a dealer, a drug dealer. And there was this mutually agreeable situation between us where I would have sex with them and he gave me drugs. But actually, I liked this person, you know? I enjoyed having sex with them and I enjoyed getting high with them. Through that, I started to explore what could be considered deviant sexual activity. We would go onto sites and people would come over and that turned into more. I was having sex with anonymous people and their status wasn't always discussed. I took lots of loads from lots of guys who I didn't know. They were in the door, they dropped their load on me and then off they'd go, and that was pretty much all I knew about them. I was doing 3-month testing, but then I kind of had this incident where I freaked out and I went to the clinic to get on PEP. So I've known other people who'd been on PEP and they said it was horrendous, but me, I didn't have any side effects at all. Well, I found out later that it was a low-level dose. It wasn't an aggressive dose because, the doctor had determined that we didn't know the status of the people involved. We didn't know that they were in fact HIV positive. Well, if we'd have known that they were HIV positive, then he would have gone and put me on a stronger dose of PEP. I didn't tell the whole truth to the doctor at the consultation. I don't know, I was a bit embarrassed about just engaging in these reckless, unsafe sex practices. I can't blame the doctor. When I got the positive result after knowing, I don't know, just knowing something wasn't right, my lymph nodes were really, really swollen, especially in my groin. And, well, yeah, I'm a sweaty person at night, so if I was having night sweats, I didn't notice.
I was in shock, obviously, and at that point then I knew when I left then the reality would set in, but whilst I was there I wasn't going to have him see me cry. But when I left I lost it. And I thought, I can't do this. You know, what am I going to tell my parents? I was still living with my parents. That was my first thought, and then I thought, my father's going to kill me. Being from a European family and at that time very homophobic and being infected by a POF, I knew he had this image of being shot, and the headlines would read, European father shoots girl infected by it. So I contemplated suicide. So I drove down to this secluded spot that I knew down the beach that in my mind would take a while for somebody to find me so that I could do what I had in my mind to do, which was basically car fumes, exhaust, etc. And I don't know, for some reason, I just cried and cried and cried, and this is too hard. You know what, I've never been one to give in. I've always been up for a challenge, and I thought, no, you can't give in without having tried. So I called Fairfield because I had the number, and I said, look, this is my situation. I've just been diagnosed. I don't know what to do, and if I don't get help, I'm going to suicide. And they put me onto a counsellor, and she said, this is on a Thursday. She said, can you hang on till tomorrow morning or over the weekend? And due to the counselling I got then, I realised that I wasn't going to die in the next 24 hours, and there was help at hand. And well, I won't pop myself off, so I promised that I'd be okay. And
you never get used to telling someone they're HIV positive, and unfortunately it's something we have to do a lot nowadays. You need to work out whether the diagnosis comes as a surprise to the patient. Despite sexual practices, some people don't expect it, whereas some people think, yeah, well, I put myself at risk, and that can help a bit with acceptance or denial. It's about counselling, and it's about follow-up. Doing testing, and making sure the patient lets any sexual partners know they might have had. We need to give them time to react. Some people don't seem that surprised, and some people run from the room and they're not seen again.
We got along really well. He was really cute. And he was very interested in me, and I was interested in him, and as soon as he found out that I was HIV positive, maybe I didn't match what he was looking for. Oh, look, it's just stupid. There's 100 stories like this. They're all generic. They're all the same. And you know, it chips away at this thing that we call self-esteem, so that you become too shy to even think about saying yes to a date or going out. It's tough.
I ended up going to teach English and volunteer in Mozambique, and at the end of that I went on a bus trip from a town in Tanzania to a town in Kenya, and I sat next to this man on the bus and we were having a nice old chat, and it turned out he was a Kenyan man who owned a campsite. Quite a funny, very human conversation, and it's a long journey, 10 hours, so we did sit in silence for a bit, and then he sort of turned to me about halfway through in this hushed tone, and he said, do you know anything about HIV? So I spouted off everything I knew, from how you transmitted it, to how you prevent it, to how you protect yourself against it, and some sort of spiel about where he could go to get some more information. After all of that, he then turned to me again and he said, okay, so if I have sex with my wife but I don't have a cut on my body yet, I should be okay? I was lost for words. I don't think we're ever going to get rid of stigma. Because primarily, stigma is really useful for a lot of people to try and control other people. People use it all the time, whether it's governments or public health specialists. People deliberately use stigma to marginalise other people or to demarcate what isn't acceptable in behaviour. Whether it's stigmatising stealing or smoking or HIV, these things are deliberately stigmatised, and that's not going to change. It's a way of controlling society. But I don't want to be pessimistic about it, because I actually think one of the biggest changes we've seen in the context, and what I am most familiar with around HIV over the last 10 years, is that by actually naming stigma as one of the most enduring and significant barriers to progress around HIV, we're giving people a forum to talk about it, to identify it, and to collectively try to strategise effective ways to overcome it.
As the doctor prepared Darren's drugs that would end Darren's life, we all watched Darren pass in a lovely brown suit. And James was sitting down, and as Darren passed, James got up and he was just a mess. One day, James rings me up and he says,
I'm checking myself out. They say there's nothing they can do for me anymore. I've spoken to the social worker and he wants me to come down to Sydney on Friday, and the doctor's coming on Tuesday, and that's booked, and the funeral's the following Friday, and the church is booked. And I'm thinking, this is like my friend telling me. And he says, so come on over on Friday and we'll get through the weekend, and after we watch Melrose Place on Tuesday, the doctor's coming. And I said, okay, darling, I'll be there. I hadn't seen him for a couple of months. And there was this emaciated person standing there with this lovely rosary bead and a fabric little religious thing. And he said, hi, honey, come in. And I looked into his eyes, and I'd never seen that look on a person's face before. He was so at peace with himself, and he'd accepted everything, and that they'd made the right decisions for him. I thought to myself, I've got no right to question your decisions. My duty was to find a slide projector so that James could put the slides into the projector carousel wheel that he'd had made up months in advance, so that when they were shown at his wake, he'd know what order they'd be. I want to go to the church and check the sound system. I was like, what? You can hardly fucking walk. We're performing euthanasia and you want to go to the church and check the sound system? And he says, yes, because I've made the CD. The doctor said, he's going to count to James 1, 2, 3. And on the count of 1, James would take a deep breath and he'd be gone. So the doctor says, 1, and we all start to cry. James opens his eyes and says, would you all fucking shut up? I'm trying to die here.
They had a copy of my registration form. On the evening news, they showed my name, my number, my address, and my registration form. It said, please note, this player is HIV positive. They showed that on the evening news.
I don't think I've particularly experienced the harsh end of stigma. Actually, to be completely honest, I don't think anyone's ever made me feel particularly bad about being positive. I think I've made myself feel bad.
I try not to let it define me.
I think one of the saddest things for me is seeing how much stigma exists in our own community. And I think in some ways, stigma from outside, you can understand it a bit more, and you can rally against it a bit more. But when it's your own community, I think it's very hard. And I think it's hard for people who are diagnosed when their own community stigmatises them to the point where they feel like they can't really talk about it. They feel like they can't be open about